Everyone, so in this video, I just wanted to kind of talk about downregulation breathing and 5 techniques that I might particularly go to use with my clients to help them to implement a practice or a breath work kind of state change to bring down stress. And going to go through a little bit of the functions of each one, talk a little bit about both and give you some insight of how you could potentially use it and just my opinion on those themselves. So I want to start off with the well-known physiological sigh that Dr. Andrew Huberman has put research out to suggest that this is a good form of stress relief. But what this is taken from is it's taken from our intrinsic way to offload stress, which is sighing in general. You would have noticed yourself every now and then just going, maybe you're in an argument, maybe someone's frustrating you, and all of a sudden you sigh like that and they pick up, and it's quite obvious that there is a sense of frustration. For me, sighing can occur when people are feeling as if they have a bit of overwhelm and they want to kind of offload and relieve that, but sometimes sighing itself can become a bit of a habit, a learned way that people can offload suppressed emotion or emotion to suppress it. It's like a bit of a breath holder tightened and you can see this in people. It seems to show up in people, particularly with things like panic disorder, anxiety disorder, and grief. And it's all to do with a peptide called bomycin-like peptide being drip-fed into our hypothalamus, which leads to an increase in sighing phenomenon from our pre-Botzinger complex, this deep breath. Now, because this happens often, and it occurs kind of as a means to resolve stress, and the more stress an individual, the more it happens because of this chemical. Andrew Huberman has kind of looked at it and gone, can we use this as a breath work practice? And we can. He has done some research. There's arguments around whether it's been tainted and stuff like that because it was in Journal Cell and he's the editor-in-chief of Journal Cell, etc., etc. But the nature is it's a breath practice that allows someone just to, number one, check in with their breathing and just center himself like any breath practice does, an element of mindfulness. But number two, prolong and exhale. And number three, maybe offload what might be a feeling of an elevated level of carbon dioxide, which could be associated with feelings of anxiety. And I'm not going to go down that too much. So when is this a good practice to use and when is it not a good practice to use? The physiological sigh in general is a double inhale through the nose and a long exhale out through the mouth. And I think the time that's a benefit for someone to use is when they're in the moment and they feel stressed. If I'm in a rush and I've got to go to the shops, I've got to get to a Coles or Woolworths or an Asda to do the shopping, and I completely forget that it's a Saturday or Sunday and I walk in and it's really busy, and I get all my shopping, and I'm looking at my watch, and I'm like, I've got to get to somewhere in a moment, and there's a huge queue at all of the shopping alleys. I'm probably going to feel myself getting a little bit stressed, a little bit worked up, a little bit hyper aroused, and being in a rush. And that's a perfect time for me to just go and just let off some of that steam. However, I don't necessarily agree with how Andrew Huberman suggests that we should do this as a regular practice. I think it's not really the way that we breathe functionally. And also, I don't believe that if someone, in other cases, if someone has habitual sighing as a dysfunction, then we are just contributing further to a poor breathing pattern and therefore creating some further conditioning around someone taking over control of their breathing and believing that's the way that they should breathe further. So the physiological sigh in someone who is reasonably healthy or someone who doesn't have habitual sighing already in their dysfunction of their breathing can be used in the acute moment every now and then to use a conscious way to sigh. The fact is you'll probably unconsciously sigh anyway. That's the nature of how our breathing is reflexive and adaptive to our situation and our psyche. The next thing I want to talk about is just kind of diaphragmatic breathing. And I really kind of call this, maybe, you can have what I call flow breathing in my training. And I have a particular run of cadences that I use to help slow down people to build breath control. But the component of this is really thinking about using a nasal breath, a gentle breath, slowing the breath down and creating some expansion laterally and right at the posterior of our rib cage to just bring in a nice, relaxing, calming breath and promote good breathing mechanics. So that might just simply be at a resonant frequency of 3 in, 6 out, or a 5 in, 5 out at around 6 breaths per minute. Literature suggests that when we are doing a breath practice, it doesn't really matter about the inhalation to exhalation ratio as much as we initially thought, as long as we're slowing the breath rate down. And that practice can be from 5 minutes onwards. Minimal 5 minutes is still going to have a benefit on bringing down stress. And that might be useful to do that, say at night time, to downregulate before bed to get an increased quality of sleep. On that case, we also have the 4-7-8 method, devised by Dr. Weil. And this is where we have an account for inhale for 4, a pause at the top for 7, and an exhale for 8. And we can see that there is twice a longer exhale than the inhale. And in this component, whilst I don't think it's going to have that much difference, we also have a pause at the top. And that pause just gives every now and then a moment to maybe just be in a bit more stillness, to be aware of like the nothingness that's going on, maybe to be a bit mindful, but also it helps assist in slowing the breath rate even further. So if we are using a count as a second, then we have 4-7-8, we've got 19 seconds there, that's almost 3 breaths per minute, very, very slow. Now, whilst slowing the breath rate down past 6 breaths per minute, in most people, is not going to increase heart rate variability more. It might actually create more of a deeper, relaxed, meditative state because of how slow and how calming this might be for our nervous system. So this breath practice simply is breathing in through the nose for 4, 3, 2, 1, holding for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and out for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Again, could be used at night time as a practice to help assist bringing down arousal level, bringing down sympathetic charge so you can get a better quality sleep. The next one I want to talk about is box breathing. And box breathing was developed by, it's sometimes called tactical breathing. I believe it was the Navy SEALs over in America that developed this concept of just breathing in roughly for 4 seconds, holding for 4 seconds, out for 4 seconds, holding for 4 seconds. And in doing this, again, we are slowing the breathing rate down. Now we're at 4, 8, 12, 16, roughly 4 breaths per minute again, a little bit less. And that is going to be enough to regulate stress in the moment. So if you imagine a Navy SEAL in action, there's going to be a level of arousal, level of charge, a level of sympathetic activity that's going to be there for alert. But if someone feels too afraid, then focus levels might be too narrow, and then peripheral vision might start to be impaired, and reactivity might be increased, and there might be poor decision making. So using something like a box breathing whilst doing a skill or doing a task can actually slow down the breath rate enough to change the relationship between our breathing frequency and a part of our brain called the locus coeruleus, which controls arousal, focus, and attention, and can help to increase the ability to pay attention and be focused. So for people who want to improve their focus levels, but also want to downregulate, box breathing might be a choice that you can actually do. Okay? And then the final one is what might be typically be called cadence breathing. In cadence breathing, again, you want to focus on having good breathing mechanics, but now we start to apply particular ratios. And those ratios can contribute or add to change in how an individual might respond to improving breath control, but also added an element of air hunger into there as well. So you might have an inhale for a ratio of 1, hold for 2, and out for 2, and inhale for 1, hold for 3, and out for 2, inhale for 1, hold for 4, out for 2. And changing the ratios of that, and then obviously leaning into, if you breathe in for 3 and it's a ratio of 4 at the top, you can have 12, and then for 2 it's going to be 6. So in for 3, 12, 6. And that's now slowing the breath rate down to almost 2.5 breaths per minute. But at that top, the higher the ratio, the more kind of that breath hold is, the more CO2 is going to rise, the more challenging it's going to make for that exhale to be able to control it. So with cadence breathing, particularly with a high ratio of cadence breathing, we might start adding an element of air hunger and controlling your ability to control your exhale under air hunger, which then contributes to being able to control your breathing in a stressful situation, which is kind of what we want to be able to do if we're in a challenging situation, is to be able to take control of ourselves, have a good mechanical skill, and have the ability to take control of our own physiology, our heart rate, and be okay with the sensations. Learn to navigate those sensations of feelings of anxiety, fear, which in essence is air hunger. So in summary, there are 5 practices that you could use for different functions in different ways. We have the physiological side for acute meaning,